My name is Andrew Gustafson, and who I am is really not important. But I am a volunteer here tonight. I'm the guy that gets to just be on the mic and ask the questions. Your questions, though. So keep those questions coming, and we'll see if we can get through as many of them as possible in the next 2 hours-ish. First of all, let me just go ahead and welcome all of you guys, and just say again, thank you to the Foothills Alliance Church for the use of their space. It's a real privilege that we can gather together and do this again. So thank you for that space. Let me say thank you to Dawn. This is Dawn, the Executive Director for the Okotoks and District Chamber of Commerce. She has partnered up with the High River and the Diamond Valley Chambers of Commerce to organize this for us tonight. All the bills and stuff are split and everything's kind of going three ways, and so we really appreciate the Chambers of Commerce doing that for us and putting this on so that we can learn from our candidates. You'll notice we have 3 of them here on the stage. We have 2 more joining us via live stream, and that's a wonderful thing that we've all learned how to do in the last 18 months or so. But in addition also to the gathering of people that we have in front of us, this is live streamed out into the world, and so I have no idea how many people are watching this tonight, but I hope there's a lot. It's a big riding. There's a lot of really good questions ahead of us, and so hopefully we can get some really good answers and educate lots and lots and lots of people. Is there an echo from that? Is that what I'm hearing? Yeah, okay. Okay. I heard it just for a second. It was a little bit off-putting me. Hey, we acknowledge the church, we acknowledge the Chamber of Commerce. Let's just acknowledge where we are as well. Just take a second to acknowledge the traditional territories of the people of Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, which includes Blackfoot Confederacy members, Siksika, Piikani, and the Kainai First Nations, the Stoney Nakoda of Bearspaw, Chiniki, and Wesley First Nations, the Dene of Tsuut'ina First Nations, and the Métis Nation Region 3, and all those that made Treaty 7 lands their home. It's a privilege to be here. Thank you for them, and let's move on. Let's go. Let's get this going. Elections Canada has a pretty good website. It tells us everything that we need to know about where to vote, how to vote. Please go ahead and do that. This is a big riding. There's people watching this from all over the riding, so I won't get specific about where you should vote. Go to Elections Canada. You can put your address in there, and it'll tell you specifically where you can go. The election date, obviously, as many of you probably know, is September 20th. There is advanced polls happening on the 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th of September. There's also mail-in votes, and you can get information about how to do a mail-in vote also on that Elections Canada website. The questions, guys, have come to us via email over the last week or so. They've also come to us on these little cards here. I've got a whole pile of them already, and they're coming in still more. We're going to do our very best to get to all of those. I'll introduce you to Sarah, who's right here. If you can stand up, this is Sarah, who will come around and collect those from you. So I should have asked you this earlier, but where's these papers? Are they in the back? Okay. So if you can find one of these little pieces of paper and write a question on there, Sarah will collect those. If you see me take that and just put it in this reject pile, it's not because I don't like your question, it's because it's already on the list. So if you notice me doing that, it's just because I've already got them. We've compiled them all from the ones that were given to us over the last week or so via email, and now I've got a pile in front of me as well. So we'll do our best to get through as many of those as possible. We're also trying to wordsmith them a little bit because we're trying not to make these candidate-specific questions. We want to make sure that they're questions that every candidate would be capable of answering. So a few of them have come in already saying, hey, this is a question for this specific person. We're trying to word it a little bit differently so that all of them are capable of answering that. So if you hear your question, but it's not quite how you asked it, that's why. It might also be because we've had that same question from 50 different people worded in slightly different ways. So we're hoping that we kind of get the spirit of your question still without using your exact words. Hopefully we'll get that done well for you. Each candidate is going to have 2 minutes to give us a little opening remark. The questions will go one after another, 1 minute each per candidate, and then we'll give them a 90-second closing. I think that's what I needed to say from a housekeeping perspective. Let me introduce to you the candidates, and I'll do them in the order that it was drawn, not in the order that they're seated here. Daniel Hunter, little wave. He is representing the People's Party of Canada. John Barlow, representing the Conservative Party. Josh Wiley, representing the Maverick Party. Paula Schimpf, she's on the screen. If she can give us a little wave, she is representing the Liberal Party. Michelle Traxel is representing the NDP Party on the top. And Brett Rogers is representing the Green Party, but he's not with us tonight. So we have 5 of the 6 candidates that are here tonight, and Brett Rogers, if you want to learn more about him, I'm just going to leave that to you to go and do with your own resources. I told you that I was going to introduce them in the order that I drew them, but then I didn't do that. I introduced them in the order that I wrote them down above, so forget that. I'm going to go back to this. The order that they were drawn for speaking is Dan, Michelle, John, Paula, and Josh. So I'll turn this over to them now. We'll start with Dan. Dan, I'll leave you to have 2 minutes for your opening remarks, then we'll go to Michelle, John, Paula, and Josh in that order. So, Daniel Hunter.
Well, good evening, everybody, and good evening, John, and good evening. First time I've met you as well, so it's nice to meet you and everybody that's come today. Certainly respect everybody to stand up and to be involved in what is, to me, a fairly big election. We've had many over my lifetime, but I feel this one's pretty serious. I've been a lifelong conservative. I have voted for John Barlow twice, and although John is sitting here, in our system of government, our MPs represent our leaders. In this case, John represents Aaron O'Toole, and I am here representing Maxime Bernier. Over my lifetime in the Foothills area, we have had to sweep out the sitting Conservative Party several times. We swept out the federal PCs and voted in the Reform Party. We swept out the provincial PCs and voted in the Wild Rose. Aaron O'Toole is trying to drag this party to the left, and I think we need to send him and his leftist policies to join the federal and provincial PCs in the dustbin of Alberta politics. Over the last 18 months, we have witnessed the most sustained and unprecedented series of attacks against our rights and freedoms. Politicians and bureaucrats have treated our guaranteed rights as if they were merely privileges that can be taken away or used as leverage for good behavior. Our Constitution states Canada is founded upon principles that recognize the supremacy of God. Our rights did not come from politicians or unelected bureaucrats, and no politician or bureaucrat can arbitrarily take them away. Are we? Sorry? Can I finish? I've just got a little bit here.
Is that 2 minutes, Don? Then sorry, no, you can't.
Okay.
Don, can you do like one ding at 15 seconds just to give them a little warning, and then let's do that. Okay.
I can hear the bell. Thank you very much for everybody for being here and participating in our democracy. And I agree with Dan. I think this is one of the most important elections of our generation, and certainly more importantly for the generations that are following most of us in this room. We have a prime minister right now that has added more to Canada's debt than every prime minister in Canadian history combined. Let that sink in. We now have a national debt of more than $1 trillion. That means every one of you in this room now has shares in a $35,000 debt that is going to be passed on to the generations that follow us. We have to have a government that has a vision, that has a plan. And we need conservatives from across country, from every region of this country, to stand together to ensure that we can defeat one of the most corrupt, inept governments in our history. We need a conservative government, a strong, united, focused, accountable, and fiscally responsible government that is going to get Canada's economy back on track. And for those of you here in Foothills, you need a representative that is experienced, someone you have trusted, someone you know can get the job done. Over the last 7 years, I feel I've been able to do that, representing this constituency of Foothills. I've had skin in the game. I've raised my family here. I've worked here. I play here. Foothills is a part of me, and nothing is more important than that. And I know you're going to hear tonight that some of these candidates here want to have a different voice in Ottawa, or they think they're going to be a stronger voice. But you need the voice that's in government to make those changes. The changes that most of us in this room want to see happen. And that is something I've been focused on. I pride myself on number one, being the voice of Foothills first, and the voice of this constituents is always my number one priority.
My name is Josh Wiley. I'm here representing the Maverick Party, a new party that some of you hopefully are familiar with. 4 Reform MPs came out of retirement last year to put this together. It's only 11 years old. Some key characteristics here: we are only running candidates in Western Canada. Regional representation. Think the Bloc Québécois model, that type of regional representation, implanted here in Western Canada. It's been very effective for them. We think regional representation resolves a lot of the problems that we're having in this country at the moment, particularly in the West. I think the country, the political side of it, is going towards a multi-party system. We have the Greens and the Blocs and the NDP and the Tories and the Liberals. You may or may not like that, but it is a fact of the matter. What's missing out of that equation is Western representation. Anybody paying attention, it's very clear that John mentioned fiscally responsible. Watch the election trail and listen to every announcement that Aaron O'Toole has. There's no fiscally responsible person there. He is trying to out-liberal the Liberals, okay? John also mentioned a voice in Parliament. Aaron O'Toole made it clear about a week ago that this is the platform I am running on, this is the platform that every Conservative is running on, and if they don't like it, they will not be in Conservative caucus. That's not representation, folks. The way this system is supposed to work, thank you. Is us in the Foothills riding elect a representative to be our voice in Ottawa. What we have gotten is Aaron O'Toole's representative here in the Foothills. It's the system that's the problem. The Bloc Québécois figured this out in the 90s. They put this stuff together. It's been working out for them. We need to implement that here, because if we don't do it soon, there won't be anything left for our kids and grandkids to fight for. And that's what this is about. Thank you very much.
You're all comfortable with this. I'd like to get, there's a lot of questions. I'd like to get into those. If we can move on, that's what we're just working on. So if we can get her on the phone, maybe she can answer questions via the phone instead of via Zoom. And I don't know how that works for live feed. I'm going to, again, leave that to smarter people than me, but we'll at least get some answers and give her an opportunity to speak. But if we can move into questions, and we'll circle back to Paula for her introductory remarks. Everybody in the room feel like that's a reasonable way to go? Okay. So we'll start then, we'll go in the same order then that we did the introductory remarks, and then we'll alternate the order for questions. But we're going to start it with Dan, Michelle, John, maybe Paula, and Josh. We'll go from there. So number one question that was coming in over the week has been simply this: how do we navigate a recovery from this pandemic? Right? What are the programs and services? I'm trying to paraphrase a whole bunch of questions in here, so it's a bit of a long question, but what are the programs, services, or processes needed to be created, continued, or abolished, and what are the top priorities for recovery from this pandemic? Start with you, Dan. 60 seconds.
First, we need to fire Dr. Tam. Second, we need to get rid of the PCR test. And to fix the problem, if we started testing properly, and the third thing is I think we would have a remedial ethics course for every health official in this country. Stop lying. Stop manipulating the statistics. We can handle the truth. There's no such thing as a noble lie. And I, for one, am sick of being lied to. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, so I have Michelle on the phone. Okay. So we'll go that route. I'm going to put her on speaker when it's her turn to speak. But here, is that the best way to do this? Let's go from there. So, Michelle,
Hello.
you are up. Did you hear the question?
I unfortunately did not hear the question.
So the question is, how do we navigate a recovery from the pandemic? What's the NDP, in your case, going to do with programs, services, processes, et cetera? What needs to be created, continued, or abolished to move past this pandemic? Go.
Well, I think the first order of business is to address that our ongoing taxation of low and middle class earners hasn't worked and won't work, and we need to really take the onus of going after big business and taking money from big investors who have manipulated the capital gains and taken that money, walked right out of Canada. We've set ourselves up to fail, and we're continuing to tax lower and middle class earners into poverty for absolutely no gain for this country.
Okay. John.
When this first started, one of the first things that we did out of our office is we started the Foothills Business Recovery Task Force. We tapped into a lot of the experts that we had in the riding that had gone through the 2013 flood. So we had that experience on how to rebuild our local community coming out of that disaster in the 2013 flood, and how could we use that as a resource for the pandemic. So we had a lot of programs that came out of that we were able to pass on in the House of Commons that actually helped make some reforms to some of those programs that are there. So we had an impact here locally thanks to many of the business owners here in our riding and many of the experts that provided that insight. We need to get ourselves off these programs that were important at the beginning, like the wage subsidy, like the emergency business account, and now start to help those small businesses get back on their feet. Our focus is the job surge program, bring 1 million jobs back to the economy that we've lost. Is that 15 seconds or is that it? Okay. And that is our focus, to get our small businesses back up on their feet with tax credits that allow them to hire new folks and redo the Business Bank of Canada to ensure that small businesses have access to those loans as well.
Okay. Paula, can you hear me? Okay, so I've got Paula on the phone now. Paula, so what she's suggesting is, I'm just hanging up on her. She's going to hear the questions. She's going to submit answers to those questions. She will put that out there, and we will be free to look at that after the fact. But she's not going to be involved in speaking to us at this point forward, which I think is a fair enough solution, given this sort of strange issue. You know, we love this technology, and then we don't, right? Do you remember the question, Josh?
You're down, Andrew.
Okay. I'm gonna let you go ahead and answer. Okay, we'll move on. Josh.
Okay, so what programs and services are we what priorities do we have to get through this pandemic? Well, first and foremost, it isn't a program or service from the government that's going to get us through this. It's the government getting the hell out of the way and letting people do what they do best. It's not the long list that we heard from John. Another big issue that we need to address beforehand is the fact that we have a lower population in the West, but a wealthier population. All these programs that they're listing off, who do you think that's going to be on the backs of? The people here. And what we need is somebody standing in Parliament that's willing to say that. Somebody that's willing to stand up for you, and that we've had enough of this crap. The way the Parliament is set up, we're being taken advantage of here, folks. And before we recover, before we hit this recovery, we need to start making our own bed here in Alberta before we go out and save the world.
Okay. Next question. We're going to start with Michelle on this one. Question is with regards to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. How will we know when the goals of that Truth and Reconciliation Commission have been accomplished? In the meantime, what role do the citizens of the Foothills riding need to play to better serve progress to those goals, and what role does the MP's office have towards those goals? Michelle, on speakerphone.
Awesome, thank you. So I think first and foremost, we need to really address that the genocide that happened at residential schools is real. And I think we will see accountability within those, within that moment, when we can see inclusion of Indigenous people within our communities and prosperity for Indigenous communities throughout the Foothills. I think we are sitting at a really important precipice where we can have a lot of inclusion for the Foothills, and specifically around stewardship programs of land reclamation and forward-thinking sustainable farming practices. And I really believe that we have to move forward with inclusion, and the role of the MP's office would be to facilitate that inclusion, to ensure that Indigenous people are represented fairly, and represented in an inclusive manner for the entire Foothills.
Thank you. John.
Thanks. I was very proud of the fact that Stephen Harper initiated the Truth and Reconciliation Commission when he was the Prime Minister. He made the apology to First Nations for the residential schools. And that was a proud day for us as parliamentarians when the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report was established. I don't think it's up to us to say when that Truth and Reconciliation is going to be accomplished. That's going to be a nationwide decision. But for us here in Foothills, we've had some great advances and great accomplishments. Just today, I was able to meet with the owners of Titanwall and High River, who have signed a memorandum of understanding with some of the First Nations communities in northern Alberta to be building homes for them, employing First Nations here in High River, if we can get that operation up to full speed. I'm very proud of the fact that I have 3 First Nations in my riding. We have good working relationships, but it has to be a relationship that you work together to reach that goal. And there are some steps that definitely need to be taken that we haven't finished yet, but that is going to be an ongoing process for sure.
Okay, thanks, John. Josh.
Right, so Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I quite honestly haven't read that, and I assume most of you in the room have not. I'm a proud member of the Métis Nation of Alberta. I'm sensitive to Aboriginal issues, but what is good for the goose is good for the gander, so to speak. We need to get this province back on track, and the solution to a lot of these problems that they're having on the reserves probably tie back to prosperity, right? We need to get their businesses involved in our economy. A lot of them are very progressive. I had a gentleman approach me from the Piikani Nation when I was down in Pincher Creek, spouting out just that, about how they want to get more involved and how they have groups down there to do it. And I think that's probably the answer to a lot of the problems on those reserves. It's the poverty issue.
Dan.
We've been dealing with this issue since Prime Minister Harper was in office. It's been 12 years. I think we have to ask ourselves, why is the media pushing this narrative now? I really appreciated a report from a chief in the Okanagan who said, we've known about all these sites for 50 years. So he was telling the truth. But again, the media is trying to divide us. They're trying to sensationalize a very sensitive issue. And this is about them making money. So we need to recognize what's going on and understand that we're dealing with this issue in a very sensitive way and have for 12 years.
So next question goes to John first. This is a little bit of a quicker question. Vaccine passports. Go.
I do not. I've been very open from the beginning of this. I sat on the health committee for the past year and a half. Every single official we had from Health Canada or the Public Health Agency of Canada said 2 things. Mandatory vaccines were not necessary. We'll get to herd immunity once we get to 70% vaccination. We're now well past that. I do not support vaccine passports either, but I want to be really clear here. The vaccine passport will be a provincial jurisdiction. I know there'll be some comments that's coming from some of my colleagues here, but there's my position. But the only way there'll be mandatory vaccines is if the Alberta government does that, and vaccine passport too, if the Alberta government does that. The announcement from Trudeau, which again I do disagree with, and which has put him in very hot water in this election, is he wanted that for federally regulated industries. We do not support that. This is a person's choice, and that should end there.
Okay. Yeah, Josh.
Vaccine passports. I would just add, guys, that in context here, Justin Trudeau brought this up 2 days before he dropped the writ. He wants this to be the ballot box question. He wants us all talking about this. Every minute that we are talking about it, he wins. That's number 1. Number 2, whether you get the vaccine or not is a decision between you and your doctor, and it has nothing to do with politicians. It should not have anything to do with politicians. A lot of this stuff, these health services, of course, is provincial jurisdiction. We're all federal parties here. But I can tell you what, the regional representation, these vaccine passports are very popular in Quebec. This is why they're doing it. If we had a regional representation here, we'd have somebody that can stand up for them. Once Aaron O'Toole puts anything regarding these in their platform, John will speak to it or he'll be kicked out of the party.
Dan.
Aaron O'Toole has been on both sides of this argument. He is firmly on both sides of this argument. So, thank you for being so clear, Aaron O'Toole. I think we know what he's going to do. He kicked out a candidate out of Yukon for even speaking against vaccine passports. We know what he will do if he gets in power. We know what the Liberals will do if they get in power. We know what the NDP will do if they get in power. There's only one party, and my colleague here, who will fight against vaccine passports, will not allow that to happen in our country. Because it's not just about this. It's about our ability to freely interact with each other, with our families, and to earn a living. Because if they get between that, we're all in big trouble.
All right, Michelle.
Hi, thank you for asking the question. So vaccine passports are a ridiculously sensitive topic for me, and the specific reason why I'm not in that room right now is because I'm medically compromised and unable to get vaccinated. So I'm a person that's dependent on everybody else getting vaccinated. So for me, knowing that a majority of the people within a room aren't vaccinated is dangerous, and I'm putting myself at risk. So I am for the vaccine passport. It's really the only way I'm going to be able to get back to a normal life.
Civil. No, I'm dead serious. We're going to keep it civil, and we're here to hear them, not you. Okay? Let's just keep it civil. Josh, you're up first for the next question. The next question is two-word question again. Carbon tax.
Carbon taxes. First, the Liberal carbon tax started at $20 with no plans to increase it. A couple of years later, we're going to $170. Now we have the Conservative carbon tax, which John will support or John will not be a Conservative. Now, I would challenge all of you to name a government program that came into place and then shrunk or got smaller. Aaron O'Toole says he will cap it at 50, I believe it is. Nonsense. That man flip-flopped on the carbon tax to begin with. He also said there'd be free votes on it, and he said last week there now is not. That carbon tax will grow and grow and grow, while China is getting 57% of their energy from coal consumption. We are 1.6% of emissions. We are not achieving anything by doing this, except for crushing jobs here in the West to benefit Quebec. And that's why the Conservative Party and John now are doing that, to get votes in Quebec. This is the problem with the system. John can't stand up against that. We need people in that building that can.
All right. Dan, go ahead.
What the Conservative plan for the environment, it's basically the Conservative version of the Green New Deal. I've read it. It's shocking. What it says to me is that Aaron O'Toole could care less about Alberta. He is only concerned about whether or not he can get votes in Ontario and Quebec, and he has made a strategic decision that he will sacrifice all of us on that table. So I feel bad that John has to come here and represent this. This is not a Conservative. This is not a Conservative. And we don't have to support him. And I'm asking you not to support Aaron O'Toole and something that will damage our economy.
From the phone, Michelle.
Hello. So as far as the carbon tax is concerned, I think it is an archaic approach to solving a problem. I think it is a very misguided approach to green momentum and sustainability. And I think more importantly, it just costs us money and it doesn't do anything to solve the climate crisis. I think a more accountable approach would be to charge large corporations that are some of the top producers of carbon in the world to pay for native grass carbon sinks here in the foothills and utilize what we already have. I think it's a very effective way to generate revenue off of disused land and to move the end goal forward without taxing the general population.
Yeah, I appreciate my colleagues speaking for me, and it's great that they know that Aaron O'Toole is going to be the next Prime Minister of Canada. I'm very excited about that. But obviously, I've ran on opposing a carbon tax since I was first elected, and that has not changed. I have Many of you that have emailed my office or called my office, I've told you exactly that, and my position is not going to change. I have not supported a carbon tax. So there are farmers in my riding, Mountain View Poultry, which is just down the street, which I've had at committee in Ottawa. Many of my businesses I've had there. His carbon tax bill is $24,000 a month to heat his barns. We put forward a private members bill as Conservatives. It's extremely rare for a Conservative private members bill to get through the House of Commons to exempt agriculture from the carbon tax. So these are the things that we've been able to accomplish as despite being in opposition. So imagine what we're able to do once we are in government. And we can do that if Conservatives stay united. I don't know if the bell goes all the time for everybody, but I think it's important that we have a civil discussion up here. Okay, guys?
Agreed. So the next question goes to Dan first, and the question is, what's the most appropriate role for Canada in Afghanistan?
I would really like to see our country be free first. So let's worry about our country and let the Afghans take care of theirs.
Michelle.
So I think first and foremost, I just want to address the fact that I'm not a military leader, and I can't speak to the military intricacies of this scale of war. But through my entire lifetime, I've seen these endless war on insert adverb here, and they've been incredibly ineffective. We've successfully destabilized a country and left countless people fleeing for their safety. I think first and foremost, we need to really evaluate what was our role originally in Afghanistan. Are we going to sit idle and let people continue to suffer at the hands of the Taliban? And how can we transition some of those immigrants into our community? Thank you.
John?
No person should be left behind. There are 1,200 Canadians or Afghans who helped Canadian soldiers during our time there. We knew in April that the American military would be pulling out and transitioning the defense of Afghanistan to the Afghani government and the army. Obviously, things have changed, but we should have been starting in April to remove our consulate staff, our military, as well as those Afghani people who put their lives on the line to protect Canadian men and women in uniform. This is one of the first times in my life that I've been embarrassed to be Canadian on how poorly this has been handled by the current Liberal government. There's no way that we should be leaving a single Canadian soldier, Canadian citizen, or an Afghani citizen who helped keep Canadian military safe. We need to go back in there.
And Josh.
So that conversation should begin and end, and John's right, with getting the people, the Canadians and their families back home. Full stop. There shouldn't be any more discussion until that happens. As far as the Maverick parties goes, this party was put together with a sole purpose, and that's to get a better deal for Western Canada. My mom used to tell me that I have to make my bed before I go to school. We need to make our bed here before we start saving the planet.
Okay, so this next question, the heart of this question is regional representation. It's been asked 100 different ways. So let's just lay it out sort of like this. This is sort of how we've been able to put it together based on the comments and the questions that have come in. So in 2019, after the election, the lay of the land had every party in the country either completely or partially shut out from some regions. So the example, Conservatives, nowhere in PEI and Newfoundland, Labrador. Liberal Party was almost nowhere in Western and Central Canada. NDP were well represented only on the West Coast and little bits of Central and Northern Canada. The Bloc was obviously only present in Quebec. No single party held representation across all provinces or regions. So if that reality remains the same or consistent in 2021, how does any party, whether in government or opposition, ensure the interests of the entire nation are represented, even without MPs of that caucus from every part of the nation? A long-winded question. I think Michelle is up first on that one.
Well, first of all, I think that's a great question, and I think that's a huge part of why I jumped into the race. I was very frustrated at the lack of representation within the Foothills community, and I truly believe that if we don't have broad spectrum representation in the House of Parliament, we're going to continue to perpetuate this dual party narrative that we have. The lack of diverse representation is just a failure for Canadians. We need to have unique voices from all communities represented fairly at a federal level, a provincial level, and a municipal level. Thank you.
John?
Well, I'm going to take a bit of question on the question, because the Conservative Party was really the only national party left after the 2019 election. You had the Bloc, which had only its interests in Quebec. You had the Liberals, which had no representation in Western Canada, and the NDP was kind of splattered around a few urban centres. That left the Conservative Party as the only national united party in the House of Commons. So I think we have had some national representation with the Conservative Party of Canada, and we can grow that, and you've seen how close we are with this election, how frustrated Canadians are with Justin Trudeau. They want a national party that is going to be strong, united, and have the national view as their focus. We weren't talking about this regional distribution or regional disparity under Prime Minister Stephen Harper. This is a made in Trudeau problem that a Conservative government will fix.
All right. Josh.
Right, regional representation. We voted exclusively for Conservative Party members in 2019. We swept Alberta and Saskatchewan. What did they do for us? What do we get for that loyalty? Aaron O'Toole and a carbon tax in their policy platform. And we want to give this man power? No, thank you. Regional representation is the direction that we're going. The Bloc Québécois has been hyperly effective for Quebec, and we're going to do that here. We need people defending us. John knows that the Conservative Party is drifting towards Ontario and Quebec, and he can't say anything about it. We need people in that room that are willing to defend you. We have a unique culture here. We have a unique economy here, and it's time we start standing up for it.
Dan.
So Maxime Bernier has a unique perspective being from Quebec, but he fondly calls Alberta his second home. And I want to tell you some interesting things that I've heard him say over the last few days. I actually just met him 2 days ago, but I've got to know him through his policies. He was in Northern Ontario last week, and as he was campaigning, someone came up to him and said, "What are you going to give us? Are you going to give us a bridge? Are you going to give us a new airport? What are you going to give us?" And he said, "Nothing. Everybody will get the same all across the country." And I love that he said that. Secondly, 12 years ago, he was in Quebec, and he was telling Quebecers in French, "I am not proud that we take money from Alberta. I am not proud that we classify ourselves as a poor province. And I want to change it," and I think he will.
Okay, next question goes to John first. This is with regards to elections in general. The culture of Canadian elections at all three levels has become more and more contentious and nasty. I think there's some evidence of that in this election as well. Negativity, threats of violence, personal, verbal, online attacks are the norm rather than the exception for a lot of election candidates. Where should the line be drawn between vigorous political discourse and these types of attacks? And what solutions might exist to prevent people from stepping over that line so we can ensure all citizens feel safe and empowered to step into the political arena to offer their involvement or possibly candidacy, or simply to make elections more civil? John.
Well, it's a broad question, but I think the real crux of that, Andrew, is that I have certainly never seen my community as divided as has been over the last 18 months. And that's really sad to see, where we can't have a civil discussion anymore, or a debate even. But what the root of that, or what the cause of that would be, is you are going to see good people not want to put their name forward to run for office. And if we don't have good people, whether it's myself or Dan or Josh or Melissa, putting our names forward, that's not going to get us anywhere. There has to be room in this room here to have a discussion about the issues. And we may not agree on everything, but there's going to be some consensus that can be found if we have those discussions amongst one another. And all I would just say is, we all need to take a break from social media now and again. I think is probably the first step to having a little mental health break.
Josh.
So I just fundamentally disagree with the premise of that question. I think Canada is a fantastic country. I think we're very civil here. I think there's a lot of places on the planet that don't even have democracy. democracy is happening right here tonight. And I think we should be all proud of that. I'm sure there's a few protesters running around chasing Trudeau around. You know, this is the country that we live in, right? People have the right to protest. You don't always have to agree with them. But yeah, no, I think our democracy is working just fine, so I'm not sure where that question came from.
Dan.
Our political culture is a result of a corrupt and bribed media. We have the CBC that is on the payroll of the Liberals. They get a billion plus, and then recently they've offered a bailout of $600 million to the rest of them. What is worse, that Trudeau offered a bribe to the media of this country, or that they took it?
And Michelle.
So I think first and foremost, we really do need to address that there is a toxic culture amongst the electorals. When I entered into the race, people acted as if this was a brave undertaking. And I realized how many people are truly afraid to put their voice forward in politics. There should not be fear in running, especially in a party, in a conservative dominated party like Alberta. We need more diversity within those voices. And this continued toxic culture of hatred is really doing no one any services. It's just perpetuating us as being this really divided, unprogressive country to the national stage. And I think a federal leader needs to stand up and say, I'm willing to work with good ideas, and I will continue to work with good ideas and strive to do better instead of blaming it on the other party.
Next question goes to Josh first. There's a recurring theme in all these questions that we've been collecting around affordability, and we could ask questions specifically to seniors living, affordability in housing, rising inflation, cost of post-secondary education. There's a lot of them, but these issues perhaps need an approach consisting of all three levels of government. So what role does the federal government specifically play in this, and does your party platform include ideas to that end?
Yeah, so I mean, first and foremost, we need to stop sending $20 billion to Quebec every year through the equalization program. That'll solve a lot of the problems. We talk about affordability. From 2010 to 2018, that equalization program worked out to $5,243 per person per year. $5,200 per person per year, flooding out of Alberta. Where's John on this? You'll notice that no one in the Conservative Party platform has come out suggesting that we all vote yes in this provincial equalization referendum. You know why? Because it's not popular in Quebec. They're not allowed to. You can't come out against the carbon tax because it's popular in Quebec. Quebec gets a $6 billion daycare deal, unencumbered. Jason Kenney stands up for us. Where was John? Can't rock the boat in Quebec during an election. That's not representation, folks. We need better.
Dan.
Aaron O'Toole has asked for a 4-year term, and he's promised to balance the budget in 10 years. Way to make a promise. So we have to stop spending more money than we have. And eventually it'll catch up, and inflation will continue to go up. Our buying power will drop by, I think it's 3% right now. 3% over 10 years is 30% that you lose. It is a tax. It is a way that unrestrained governments tax everybody, and most especially anyone that's on a fixed income. You're going to be a lot poorer, and we can't have it. So let's get back to balanced budgets. And again, we had a great conservative in Prime Minister Harper that did that. So let's get back to that.
Michelle.
So I think for me, I want to see more money in the pockets of Albertans. And I think that the equalization payments are the first place that we have to start. I think we need to have more innovative solutions to problems instead of continued taxation. I think we need to do things like cap cell phone plans, cap internet costs, and get hundreds of dollars back into the pockets of Albertans every day. And that will make life easier for all of us. Thank you.
All right, and John.
We have a little bit of deja vu with what's going on right now. And I'd like to go back to what Dan said. Yes, we had a great Conservative Prime Minister in Stephen Harper who did balance the budget, but it took us 11 years to get there under Stephen Harper because of a credit crisis that we inherited from the previous Liberal government. That is the threat to what is going to be happening to the generations to come if we do not get our spending under control. So sure, I would love to say that we're going to balance the budget the first year that we're in government. But we also know that that's unrealistic. The spending that has happened under the 6 years of Justin Trudeau is unprecedented, like nothing we have ever seen before. It is going to take a lot of hard work, like Mr. Harper did when he was Prime Minister, for us to get back there to ensure that inflation is at 4.7%. I bet you it's closer to 10. The numbers are actually there. We will get there if we have a Conservative government that lets us do it.
All right, next question goes to Dan first. Your views on the $10 per day childcare, pros and cons, and will the 5-year rollout timeline exist if your party is elected?
So Maxime spoke on this last night, and he wants to leave this as a provincial jurisdiction. So if the provinces want to spend $10 a day, he does not want to add to the burden of debt that we have federally by adding additional money. So he wants to leave that as a provincial jurisdiction, and he's really for strengthening all provincial areas of authority, and I think that's where we should leave it. I think it's a good idea.
All right, Michelle.
So as a small business owner and an employer, I think accessibility to affordable daycare is priority number one to grow an economy. We need more labor that wants to work, and a majority of that labor is stuck at home caring for children that they can't afford to put in childcare. I think it's incredibly short-sighted for the Conservative platform to offer something like a tax rebate with the expectation that a family can afford to spend $900 to $2,000 a month to put children in childcare. I myself, as a mother, had to stay home for periods of time because we could not afford to care for our children. $10 a day daycare is a must and would be a huge economic boost for the economy, and all of that revenue that would be generated from the taxation of those employees would go to cover that cost. Thank you.
Okay, John.
There are a few problems with the $10 daycare program that Liberals have put forward, and I'll go over them as quickly as I can. Number one, they've promised this since 1993 and have yet to follow through with it. The second problem with a federally regulated daycare program is that means it's going to be federally limited on the provinces. A, they're going to have to match the dollars, which many provinces cannot do, and we've seen that Justin Trudeau has been playing favorites already between certain provinces. But the real issue with the $10 day daycare and federally regulated is that it is Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. So that how many of you in this room work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday? Not very many people in my riding. We have to have options that are there that the families, mom, dad, grandma, and grandpa, the guardians can make those choices that are best for them, which we brought the universal childcare program under Prime Minister Stephen Harper, which the Liberals continued but have kind of messed around with it, that we want to continue in government, that mom and dad can make the best choices that are for their family, not the federal government and someone bureaucrat in Ottawa.
Josh.
$10 a day daycare. I think they have that in Quebec at the moment. I mean, why not free daycare? Why not pay people $10 to drop their kids off, right? Where does this end, guys? Who's paying for this? Governments don't have anything. In order for them to give you something, they have to take it away from someone else. Who are they going to take it from? The lower populated, wealthier part of the country, Western Canada. We need somebody that's willing to say that in Parliament, guys. Look at how effective Jody Wilson-Raybould was when she was an independent. And she stopped Quebec declaring themselves a nation within a nation, which all the Conservatives supported. That's not true. Well, you were absent that day, conveniently. You were absent that day, conveniently. Nobody voted against it except for Jody Wilson-Raybould and Derek Sloan. You were in the washroom at that vote, I suppose.
Next question is going to go to Michelle first, but before that, let's just say John's 60 seconds is John's 60 seconds. Josh's 60 seconds is Josh's 60 seconds, etc. Understood? Okay. Michelle. So I feel like we've kind of danced around answering this question a little bit already, but here's my reject pile of questions, not because they're bad questions, but because they're repeat questions. This is the question. Please explain the whip process for your party. So in particular, how much freedom does your party allow its MPs to vote their conscience or vote based on their riding's unique perspective, even if it's unaligned with the party? Michelle.
Well, I think it's really important to address that Jagmeet Singh did encourage a relationship with conservatives and with good ideas, and has given us the freedom to speak within our party, and that's why I felt comfortable representing this party. I want to be able to vote best for the Foothills and best for my conscience, and not to follow the political propaganda. I'm uncomfortable with the way that we watch these votes go, where specifically John's voting for party, not for people, and it's just left the Foothills lost in the shuffle of this duality between liberals and conservatives. I, for one, will stand up for what my constituents want and advocate for that before my party.
John.
I'm glad this question was asked, and I'm very proud of the fact that I'm part of a party that does allow free votes. And I want to just that Josh has had some comments here, but he should really look back in Hansard. At least 3 times in the last few months, I have voted against Aaron O'Toole in the House of Commons. I've done that on several occasions.
No, this is John's time.
I've done that because I vote with how my Foothills constituents have asked me to vote. I have many different ways that I can outreach to my constituents. I'm sure many of you have participated in that. Just as one example, when we did the Doctors Assisted in Dying, I had town halls across the riding. Hundreds of people attended those, and I voted how my constituents wanted me to vote. And I've done that every single time, and I'm proud of the fact the Conservative Party allows free votes on those issues.
Josh.
So you notice John didn't answer the question about what the House Whip does. The interim leader of our party was the longest standing House Whip under Stephen Harper he was there in Parliament for 17 years. The House Whip takes Aaron O'Toole's agenda and whips guys like John into shape to make sure they follow it. He decides where they stand in Parliament. He decides if they get any questions. He decides where their office is in the building. Aaron O'Toole came out last week and said, this is the plan we're running on. This is the plan every Conservative is running on. And if they don't follow it, they won't be in Conservative caucus. That free vote thing is out the window. You are voting, a vote for John Barlow is a vote for Aaron O'Toole. Take a look at his policy and decide whether that's what you want. We need somebody that is willing to stand up and represent the people of the Foothills. That's the way the system's supposed to work. You elect a representative to be your voice. It's not what we have, and we haven't had it in a very long time.
Dan.
So, who remembers Joe Clark? I grew up in High River, and we used to live right next door to his parents, and I was very proud that Joe Clark was from High River and Prime Minister, but he got booted out, and he got booted out because there was a non-confidence vote. He didn't have the whip, and that explains what's the problem. We have a structural problem in our democracy. Unfortunately, if you have a non-confidence vote, everybody goes back to an election. And that doesn't happen in a lot of parliamentary countries. We could get rid of the leader in the UK and they don't have to have election for everybody. Unfortunately, in our system, if you have a non-confidence vote, everybody has to go back to the election. So this is the problem, and now we have a system where if you vote for him, he's going to vote for Aaron O'Toole.
Okay, next question goes to John first. What, if any, planned or proposed tax reforms are included in your party platform?
Well, I think the number one thing that I've heard from constituents on the door is a simplified tax plan. And meeting with hundreds of doors a day, not only through this campaign, but we do that every summer, is we need to simplify the tax code. And I think that's the number one thing that I've heard from folks is it's too complicated. My office deals with a lot of CRA issues that your average Albertan, your average Canadian just cannot wade through. So what I would like to see is reduction in regulation, a reduction in red tape. Not only does that help with our residents, but certainly with our business owners. We need them to be able to navigate the system quickly, to be nimble, to be able to be successful. And I think the number one thing is a competitive tax and regulatory regime, simplify the tax code, that will make it easier for Albertans as well as business owners.
Josh.
So one of the big Maverick Party kind of platform items is increasing provincial autonomy, including with tax. Ottawa is not going to take us seriously while they are collecting and managing our taxes. Ottawa is not going to take us seriously while they are hiring our police forces. Ottawa is not going to take us seriously while they're managing our retirement savings plans. Albertans have been subsidizing that CPP program since the beginning. We talk about reform. They always talk about reform. They tried it with the Reform Party in the 90s. The reform has to happen structurally. We need a regionally representative party of the people of Western Canada. We are unique here. We have a unique culture here. We have a unique economy here. And we are under attack by central Canadian politicians that are dictating to us how we're going to run our businesses and how we're going to run our families. It needs to stop.
Dan.
I really enjoy having Maxime as the leader. I can talk about him and I don't have to apologize for him. He says what he believes and I believe him, and he's a true conservative. So what he said last night on the same stage with Paul Hinman of the Wild Rose Independence Party was that he wants to see revenue go back to Alberta, that we can have an Alberta Revenue Agency, ARA. And he is, but he says realistically we can't cut taxes right now. We have too much debt, and we have to cut government. So we cut government for the next 4 years, and after that we can start cutting taxes.
Okay, and Michelle.
Well, I think for me, a huge part of this is to reevaluate the carbon tax and decide what our taxes are actually being used for, and start from the top down. I think there needs to be accountability for large businesses that have gone unchecked and unpaying of their taxes. I think there needs to be a streamline of both the tax system and government as a whole. I think we're paying a lot of money for bureaucracy, and I think it can be streamlined in an effective way that will not only move the system forward in a smooth manner, but will also save the average Canadians tons of money and tons of headache. I am sick of it. I am ready for change. Thank you.
I think we got everybody on that question, didn't we? So the next one, we go to Josh first. And I'm going to make a sort of universal statement here. I don't know if it's entirely accurate for everybody, but it sure feels that way in the way that these questions are coming in. So here's the statement. Albertans are frustrated by the current equalization payment structure. Question is that an issue? Why or why not? And if so, what's the solution? Kind of danced around that a little bit already too. So I'm going to go with Josh first on that one.
We are the only federal party that is looking to scrap the existing equalization formula. And that's representation, folks. This isn't good for us. There's only two provinces that care about equalization. The one that pays it and the one that receives it. Unfortunately, the one that receives it has all the votes. Where do you think the Conservative Party is going to skew to? We need to get rid of that equalization formula. Unfortunately, it's just not working out. It sounds great in the Constitution. Sounds like equal services across and providing all this stuff for everyone. Sounds wonderful. What happens in practice is we create a welfare trap for Quebec, and they don't develop their own resources. We're demotivating them. They have a bunch of shale gas there, and why aren't they developing it? Because they've never had to.
Okay, Dan?
Maxime talked about this last night again, and he said we can solve this in one morning in cabinet. We can fix the equalization program so it's fair for everybody. And he spoke out against the fact that in Quebec, they do not have to include all the hydroelectric payments that they receive into the equalization payments. It's unfair. Maxime is calling it out unfair in English and French.
Michelle.
first and foremost, the equalization payment needs a massive overhaul, and I think we need to not be fooled into thinking that the Conservatives didn't write the equalization algorithms. I think this is just a hot potato that gets passed between Liberals and Conservatives to drum up easy votes, and I think it doesn't benefit anybody. This needs an overhaul, and it needs an overhaul immediately. Thank you.
And John.
In our platform, we have a equalization reform program that will actually work and can get done because we have pitched it before in the last 6 or 8 months that every province unanimously and territory unanimously supported, but Justin Trudeau ignored. That is reforming the per-person cap on the equalization, as well as changing the threshold cap on equalization. What happens normally is that when Alberta's having a tough time, we're still paying into it, and that isn't fair. What this would do is eliminate and make it more accountable that when provinces are doing okay, they're paying in. When they're not paying in. And that was how it was built. To say that we're just going to get rid of it is impossible to do. You need you need 7 out of 10 provinces with more than 50% of the population to agree to that. We know Quebec and the Maritimes will not. This is a program that will fix the system, ensure that Albertans aren't paying in when they can't, and that will be actually achievable.
Okay, next question goes to you, Dan, first. Pros and cons, and what's your party position on National Pharmacare?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the...
National Pharmacare. Pros and cons, and your party position.
We're against it. Again, Maxime has 4 fundamental principles. I won't go through all of them because I probably won't remember them under the bomb. But one of them is that we get government down to as close to the people as possible. So national anything is going to be more costly, it's going to be more expensive and inefficient. So let's get all government programs at all possible down as close to the people. And that way we can be efficient. Anytime we get the government involved, we're going to be way more costly, and I personally don't want to see that.
Michelle.
So for me, when I look at this problem, I see a lot of seniors in various provinces that can't afford access to specific medications because the price of that medication in that specific province has ballooned. And I think with federal regulation and federal standards, we would see a lot more consistency within the cost of the Pharmacare system and more accountability, and it would prevent specific companies from being able to just jack up the prices unexpectedly. And I think it would lead to a better outcome for those of us who really can't afford fluctuations within medications that we depend on for our lives.
Okay, and John?
Yeah, I do not support a national pharmacare program. And the problem with it is anytime you have the government running something, it doesn't usually run well or efficiently or affordably. Now, but the real issue with the Pharmacare program, other than it's more than $2 billion a year, which we cannot afford right now, but it would actually make most Canadians, the vast majority of Canadians, about 96% of Canadians, actually have a worse program. Because 96% of Canadians are already covered through a provincial program or a private program or something through their employment. So you would actually be making a program that is much more expensive, that is actually much less effective and efficient in that you'd be forcing those Canadians who already have coverage into a program that is much worse. So I do not support a national pharmacare program.
Okay. Josh.
Yeah, national pharmacare is not a great idea. Obviously, that's going to be unbelievably expensive. That's got to get paid for somehow. Again, back to the whole premise of things that the government doesn't have anything. They're going to have to take it from somebody else in order to pay for it. They're obviously going to come after the wealthier, less populated regions of the country. We do have an aging demographic, of course. We do need to resolve that. We're going to have older and older people with the baby boomers. There's been a great shift in society, right? Just with education, people are getting healthier, people are exercising more. We need to get in front of these types of problems instead of just drugging people that are sick.
Okay, next question is going to go to Michelle first. How will you get infrastructure built that is in the national interest?
I think a project really close to my heart, specifically for the Foothills, is manufacturing. I own a business that uses compostable packaging, and we in Canada send our food waste from our agricultural sector to the United States. They turn it into pellets. The pellets are then sent to China. China then forms it into compostable packaging. I buy it and sell it to my consumers. I really don't understand why we can't invest in logical manufacturing that's clean and forward thinking that would benefit the Foothills directly. It would keep Canadians employed. It would keep the transportation costs of that specific chain down. And it's something that we could really strive to create. We would see a lot of middle to high earning jobs come back to our community in a really easy manner. Thank you.
John.
Well, the first thing we'll do is we'll scrap the Canada Infrastructure Bank, which has completely wasted $35 billion of Canadian taxpayers' money, which hasn't got a single project through the door. In fact, I think I've seen the Prime Minister here 4 times to announce funding of the Green Line in Calgary, but yet not one single hole has been dug. We would go back to what we saw in Prime Minister Stephen Harper's era with the Canada Action Plan, which helped us get through the recession in 2008-2009 with an Invest Canada plan, which would get programs out the door fast, those dollars out to the provinces quickly. But I think the most important part, which I love in our platform, is designate a portion of infrastructure dollars to rural projects. Right now, you kind of have that third, that middleman where the money goes from the federal government to the provinces and they allocate it. But we're going to have an envelope on there that ensures that a portion of the infrastructure dollars are directed to rural communities, which is very important to Foothills.
Josh.
So, I think the reason why we can't build large infrastructure projects that cross provincial borders here is because the only provinces that really want them is Alberta. So, again, we need to start standing up for ourselves here, folks. The Conservative Party was in power for a lot of years under Stephen Harper, and nothing really changed because at the end of the day, they're subject to the same system with 59% of the votes being in Ontario and Quebec. We need a party that's willing to stand up for us the way the Bloc Québécois stood up for Quebec. They started this in the 90s. We need to do this here. We need to do it now, and we need to start getting things built and getting things done in this province again.
Dan.
I don't know how we talk about infrastructure in Alberta without talking about pipelines. We have to have a pipeline from Alberta to central Canada and to eastern Canada. The fact that we don't have one is because we have massive interference by international actors. This government and previous governments have caved to the socialist corporates, entities that are being run by the UN and by other people who are anti-oil. So I was in London a couple of years ago now, I guess, and at a event that was about natural gas, and I can tell you that ESG, if you don't know that term, you're going to hear it a lot, and it's in the Conservatives' plank that they're going to promote it, they're going to push it, and that's going to kill business in Alberta. So ESG, learn about it. They're coming for our oil, and that's how they're going to do it.
So to John first on this question, it's one that's come in a couple of times, and it's with relation to Bill 21, which is a Quebec-specific bill, but the question is essentially this: should Quebec be allowed to continue to write their own rules on religion and freedom of expression?
This is one of the times that I did not vote with our leader. I do not support the fact that that there should be different rules for different provinces, but when there are things that provinces that are in provincial jurisdiction, like Bill's 101 in Quebec right now, which I don't agree with. What that is the bill about wearing religious symbols or those types of things. I do not support. But the fact that provinces have jurisdiction over certain things, that they are able to do that. But when it comes to a national scope, every province should be treated equally. There shouldn't be different rules for different provinces.
All right, Josh?
So I suspect what that question is relation to, anyone that hasn't heard of this, I'd say about 4 weeks ago, the Bloc Québécois put forward a motion in Parliament to declare Quebec, or to change the Quebec Constitution and declare them a nation within a nation, and French the only official language. Now, there was only 2 MPs that came out against that. 2 independent MPs, Jody Wilson-Raybould and Derek Sloan. Every single Conservative in the room supported that motion. John abstained from the vote. We're not sure where John was. That isn't representation. Why wasn't somebody in there asking, where's Alberta's independence? How come we aren't getting any of this? And it's because there's nobody in the room standing up for us. John's bragging about abstaining from a vote. That's not representation, folks. We can do better, and we deserve better.
Dan.
Maxime Bernier, as Prime Minister, will lower as many regulations, as many laws back down to the provincial level. So he understands that Quebec will handle things differently, Alberta will handle things differently, and we should allow the provinces to do this. So that's the position of the PPC.
And Michelle.
I think bills like this set an unfair precedent, and when you have something as important as freedom of expression and freedom of religion that's being dictated at a federal level, we're not actually solving anything. We're creating rhetoric, and we're trumping up the situation. I think it is a dangerous precedent to let a province declare itself a nation within a nation. I think it's a really dangerous precedent to not have English and French across Canada. And I think it was also kind of tacky that John abstained from the vote and is now bragging about it. I think we can do better, and we deserve better.
Sorry, we're getting. Sorry, Michelle, are you done? I was hearing a lot of feedback. Yeah. Okay. Next question goes to Josh first, and it's simply your stance on the conversion therapy law that was recently passed.
Yeah, so the Maverick Party doesn't get involved in social issues. Those are important issues to a lot of people. The Maverick Party was put together with a sole purpose, and that was to get a better deal for Western Canada. And in order to achieve that, we need to stay focused on that goal. So we don't get involved in social issues. And I actually had to, thank you, yeah, it's right in our policy platform that we will not put forward bills. I know John voted to not ban conversion therapy, and I suppose he can explain that.
Dan.
I don't actually know the official policy of the PPC, so I'll give you my opinion. My opinion is that we should allow people to get the treatment that they want, we should allow people to give treatment that they want, and we should not interfere in the relationship between medical professionals and patients. We should not interfere between families, and we should not interfere with religious societies that want to deal with their people.
Michelle.
The statistics on conversion therapy are that it's ineffective, it's dangerous, and it leads to suicide. I think we need to protect our queer community, and we need to stand up for the rights of those who've been misrepresented year after year after year. The data is on the side of banning conversion therapy, and it's wrong. It's something that is a perfect example of sometimes we need to protect children from their parents, and we need to advocate for those members who have become political talking debates and distractionary when this is a human rights matter, and we need to protect those people who are subjected to conversion therapy. Thank you.
And John.
Important things for any elected official is to represent all of your constituents, those who have social conservative issues and those who do not. So I think, number one, I did vote against C6, but I do not support conversion therapy, and everyone I spoke to in my riding did not support conversion therapy. However, there is wording in that bill which makes it very troublesome for many people in my riding, but many other Canadians. And the language in that bill, paraphrasing, basically states, by making conversion therapy a criminal code violation, a parent, a counselor, a teacher, a mental health counselor, a faith leader who are to have a discussion with a child, a student, a friend, a neighbor about their sexuality, about conversion therapy, could, under this bill, be charged under the criminal code. My job is to ensure that not passing bills just for public perception, but ensuring that we are passing the best legislation possible. This was not good legislation, and that's why I voted against it.
Okay, we go to Dan for the next question first. In relation to Bill 10, does Bill 10 censor freedom of speech, and is your party and you for or against it?
Bill 10 does censor freedom of speech. We have got to stop this. This is a core issue for the PPC. The Constitution allows us to have freedom of expression, and any type of law is unconstitutional, and it is immoral, and it is against what we believe as Canadians. We will not tolerate any more censorship in the name of hate, in the name of whatever the current issue is, because what's hate today will be tomorrow's new issue. And where does it stop? We have got to allow people to express themselves freely. We've got to allow scientists to express themselves freely. And I'll tell you one other thing. I do want to comment on that last comment that who here about the New Brunswick education minister said that the children are not their parents, that they're the states. We will not allow that to happen in Canada.
Michelle.
So I think there's elements of Bill 10 that could have been good legislation, but I think this particular bill is a perfect example of mud soup. There's no clarity in the bill, and I think it's left a lot of wiggle room for interpretation, and I'm very uncomfortable with it. I think we can do better while continuing to ensure that these multinational corporations are paying into the Canadian Broadcasting Association and ensuring that Canadian content is getting on airwaves, while simultaneously ensuring that free speech is protected in Canada and designating between what is and is not hate speech. Thank you.
John?
Yes, we oppose C10 strongly, and Canadians weren't even talking about C10 until we brought it up in the House of Commons and forced a lengthy debate on C10. The Liberals tried to jam this through, and we didn't let that happen. What is concerning with C10 is they'll talk about this being a tax on Google and Facebook and those types of things, but it does censor content on the internet. For example, Pierre Poilievre is one of our strongest voices as a conservative. The Liberal government could technically say that his website or his YouTube channel is not Canadian content or does not have Canadian values and could block it or start treating it like a business and start putting massive taxes on it. So we would oppose C10. We did oppose C10. We were able to get it to the point where it didn't pass. It died on the order table. So I think that was a huge success for the Conservative Party.
And Josh?
So I think we should take a step back and see where this bill came from. The big supporters of this are the film unions in Quebec to advocate for more Canadian content. Who's deciding what Canadian is? Well, the CRTC, conveniently, is in Quebec. These are the things that the Bloc Québécois can push for. This is the regional representation that we want to bring to the West. We need somebody that's willing to stand up for the West the way that the Bloc and the Conservatives and the Liberals, frankly, all of them are standing up for Quebec. This bill came from Quebec, this bill is for Quebec, and it is supported and heavily popular there. This is the only reason why we're talking about it. We should be talking about pipelines. We should be talking about equalization. We should be talking about bringing taxes back here, police forces. We need to get back on the agenda, folks.
Okay, so this question then goes to Michelle first. I'm just going to paraphrase because it's another one that's been given to us in multiple different languages. The paraphrase question is simply this: Senate reform. Senate reform. So your party's position on Senate reform.
Well, I think it's really important to evaluate what's going on with our government. We're paying so much for really poor representation, and it's just this continued misuse of that representation. I think addressing the Senate and what their actual role within their job scope is vitally important, and I think we need to take that approach for the entire government from the top down. Thank you. From the top down.
John?
I'm a very strong proponent of the 3E Senate, elected, effective, and equal. Unfortunately, under Western Canada right now, we do not have equal representation within the Senate. In Alberta, we took that step to elect our Senate representatives, our senators in waiting. We've done that for more than almost 20 years now. And I thought it was incredibly arrogant of the Prime Minister to appoint a senator knowing that we have the Alberta Senate elections coming up this fall. That is fundamentally wrong. The provincial government as well as the federal Conservatives strongly oppose that, and I support the province of Alberta electing their senators. We tried very hard to have Senate reform under the Reform Party and again under the Conservative Party. This again is a constitutional amendment that will take a lot of work to do, but I think the key is either abolishing it or having a Triple E Senate of some form.
Josh?
Yeah, so the Senate, it divides the country into 4 parts, all of whom get 24 senators. The Maritimes, Quebec, Ontario, and Western Canada. Western Canada splits 24 senators. We have 4.4 million people here in Alberta, represented by 6 senators. The Maritimes has 1.8 million people, represented by 24 senators. Half the people, 4 times as many senators. We're talking about electing our 6. What difference does that make? We got to go after the system here, folks. We got to think a little bit bigger here. And don't let anybody tell you that an ambitious plan isn't worth pursuing. That's un-Albertan.
Dan?
Maxime Bernier would like to see a more, effective Senate, but the reality is we don't have one. We have a bunch of people that get put there, and they get put out to pasture, and we pay them a lot of money, and it's a payoff. I mean, what are we talking about here? This is just more money that goes to pay off people that have supported you, and in its form currently, it needs to be abolished. We're just spending money for nothing, absolutely nothing.
Okay, so this question goes to John first. What do you consider to be the philosophical limits of government's power, authority, and jurisdiction? At what point has the government crossed the line into jurisdictional territory that is not theirs to govern?
Are you talking about different levels of government, Andrew? Do you know, or
I didn't write the question.
just
no.
like? Well, I guess I'll try and be quick. On the multiple levels of government side, there are strict jurisdictions, and government should not, the federal government should not be imposing its will on the provinces and the municipalities. But for myself, the government should stay out of my bedroom and stay out of my house. That's how I feel about it. It has a role to play in defense, trade, foreign affairs, but it should not be playing a role into my family and my home.
Josh?
So another central piece of our platform here is increasing provincial autonomy. We Albertans really need to look in the mirror here. We spend a lot of time complaining about about Central Canada and Eastern Canada. People treat you the way you let them treat you, okay? They're not going to take us seriously while they're collecting and managing our taxes. Quebec learned this in the 90s. Guys, we need to step up here. We need to start doing more for ourselves, and we need to start demanding a fair treatment in federation. And if we don't, then we need to start the long road to an independent Western nation. And that can be either in or out of federation.
All right, Dan.
This is a great question because it ties into why I got into the race, and that is over COVID passports and the fact that the Liberal government wants to spend another $1 billion trying to integrate COVID passports and restrict our freedoms. They need to stay out of our business and allow us to make our medical choices for ourselves and for our families. This kind of overreach is why I'm in this race. We have constitutional rights that have been trampled for the last 18 months, and they will continue to be trampled until we stand up and say, no more. We have our rights. They're not from you, and we're going to take them back.
And Michelle.
I think the role of a federal government is to ensure safety and prosperity for all people across the province. I think there is a lot of referendum that we can do within the role of government, and I personally believe there is a lot of overreach. I know for myself as a small business owner, I look at all the various loopholes I have to jump through, both at a federal level and a provincial level, and just shake my head. I think there's a lot of autonomy that can be achieved for each province across Canada, while still striving to protect Canadians and provide prosperity for all. Thank you.
Okay, next question, we start with Josh. What is your stance, your party stance, I suppose is a better way to put that. What's your party stance on gun control?
Yeah, so again, we're a Western party here, guys, right? And it circles back to the polarization between the East and the West. These gun laws are created because of the problems in Toronto. Gun laws are very different or should be very different out here. We have them differently, and people, when they see guns, they see them on the news or they see them in an action movie. They don't see me teaching my son how to shoot. They don't see me out hunting with fathers and sons that only get together in a hunting trip. Some people have golf clubs or a racket in their closet. I have firearms in my closet. We need somebody that's willing to stand up for that. We need to bring our police forces here. We need to bring our chief firearms officers here. And we need to stop letting people in central Canada dictate to us what we're doing with our property.
Okay, Dan.
We have to believe what the Liberals, the NDP, and the other leftists are saying about guns. They're going to come for them, they're going to restrict them, and they're going to make sure that it's as difficult as possible for us to have guns. So if you want to have that, we have to, or you don't want to have that, we have got to stand against it. Again, it's not a constitutional right. I like what the Alberta government is doing, where they're trying to bring that kind of regulation onto the provincial scale. I also am a PAL holder and doing hunter training as we speak. So I'm a full supporter of gun rights.
Michelle.
So I grew up in a rural community. I know the importance of having a gun on a rural property. I have definitely had to shoot at a wolf before. I think it is a thing that needs to be addressed across Canada, because I personally believe that these gun laws are so muddled and so convoluted that it's allowing bad gun owners to get guns and keeping guns out of the hands of responsible gun owners. I personally am tired of the back and forth. I think ridiculous legislation around things like bump stocks is just passing the buck. It's not taking accountability, and it's not ensuring that guns are represented in a fair and safe manner across Canada, and it's just perpetuating the bad guys having guns. Thank you.
And John.
I don't think this is an East versus West issue. This is more an urban-rural issue. I can certainly tell you that there are friends of mine, my colleagues in rural Ontario and rural Quebec and Atlantic Canada, who are very supportive of Canadians' firearms rights. The issue that we're facing is that media rhetoric that taking away your firearms is somehow going to address gun crime. Every single data and science that we see, that is fundamentally untrue. We know that taking away firearms from lawful firearms owners is going to do zero to address gun crime. I can tell you that the fentanyl operation that was just busted here out in Alderside, those guys who did not go to Flies, etc. in High River, fill out all the correct forms, get their PAL, and purchase their firearm. They were illegally smuggled across in the United States. Our focus needs to be on that, cracking down on smuggling and illegal firearms owners.
All right, so the clock that I have on this phone leads me to think we've got time for two more. Next one goes to Dan first. Should Western Canada oil be used before any foreign oil be allowed into Canada?
So Sam, can you say the full question again?
Sorry, my name is Andrew, first of all, but that's okay. Should Western Canada oil be used before any foreign oil be allowed into Canada?
Yes, it should be. So there you go.
Good answer, good answer.
Yeah, we should be energy independent, and I'd like to see energy independence not only as a nation, but even as an individual. And we can be energy independent. There's lots of great new green technology like solar panels, and I think we should encourage people to adopt that, and I think we should allow people to be as energy independent as we are as a nation. So,
Michelle.
Sorry, my apologies. There's just a slight delay. I think first and foremost, as somebody in their 30s who sat and watched the growth, expansion, and slow decrease of the Canadian oil industry, I'm disgusted by the fact that Alberta is so dependent on American trade. I don't understand why we haven't been pursuing this aggressively from the start. I think it is disgusting that we have refineries on the east coast of Canada that are importing crude oil that is extracted from very questionable methods when we have the cleanest oil here in Canada. And I hate being dependent on the United States of America, and it's time to change that. And we need that innovation here in the foothills. We need to be leaders in clean technology on how to turn these crude products into other degrees of products within the oil sector, and I will spearhead that personally. It is a priority for me, and I want to see middle-class jobs come back to this community en masse. Thank you.
John.
Not a bad NDP answer, I have to say. You're going to get a call from Jagmeet Singh tomorrow, but we are importing 750,000 barrels of oil a day from places like Venezuela, Saudi Arabia that have zero environmental standards, zero human rights standards. So yes, absolutely, Western Canadian oil should be used first before we import one drop from any other country. But I'm going to go a step further. Not only should we have energy sovereignty, but Canadian energy should be exported around the world to take countries like China, India, off of coal-fired power plants. If you want to really have an impact on GHG emissions and reductions, Canadian energy is not the problem. We're the solution.
All right, Josh.
So I've worked in the energy sector since 2007. I've seen these ups and downs. You know, you have to tolerate the oil price swings, and I think companies are set up to do that. What we can't tolerate is the government attacking the sector, both directly through things like carbon tax and indirectly through things like classifying plastic as a toxic substance. We need to start fighting back. The soft defense that we are getting from the Conservative Party on this front is not sufficient. We need to stand up for our energy sector. It is the most heavily regulated industry anywhere on the planet, and we need to start standing up for it.
All right, and this question will go to Michelle first. So it's basically, what have we missed? What's the issue that's not being addressed here tonight or in the media? What's no one talking about? What needs to be talked about? What's not getting the proper attention in your opinion at the moment? What's the issue in your opinion, and what's your proposal for addressing that issue?
I think for me, a priority is to address how poor we all collectively are. It doesn't matter how much money we're making on our tax sheets at the end of the year. We're all broke and we're struggling to pay our basic bills. I think we need accountability from government to hold big banks accountable, to stop playing the Canadian economy like it's a game of Monopoly and get more money into the pockets of Canadians. We are seeing everybody across the board struggle, and if it's not addressed really, really quickly in an aggressive way, we're going to see so many homes come to foreclosure, we're going to see so many cars repossessed, and we're going to see a real decline in prosperity for Canada. And that really needs to be addressed, and we need to have a real talk about how much this is all costing us. Thank you.
John.
Yeah, there's lots of good issues, Andrew, and obviously affordability and agriculture, some things we didn't really have a chance to talk about tonight. But I think the one that's important to me is mental health and opioid addiction. This is something that has been very passionate for me. I was chair of the Mental Health and Opioid Addiction Caucus over this last year, helped develop our policy for this campaign, which I am very proud to see that we have announced our Mental Health and Opioid Action Plan to address. This is a crisis, not only in Western Canada, but certainly here in our community. And it's only been exacerbated as a result of COVID. So I think we have to take a look at mental health and opioid addiction in a very different way. This is going to far outlast the ramifications of COVID. And I think that Canadian governments of all levels need to put a focus on mental health and addressing the opioid crisis.
Josh.
So I think the thing that comes up for me, the missed topic the most, is vote splitting, actually. As more and more people are disenfranchised with the Conservative Party of Canada, they want something new, but they're concerned with vote splitting. Now, the Reform Party went through this. A Maverick MP is not one less Conservative. My vote will be the same amount as John's when we're getting rid of Justin Trudeau. Of course we will vote with the Conservative Party to get rid of Trudeau. But when the Conservative Party puts forward their carbon tax, for example, Maverick MPs will vote against it. That's what regional representation is.
Okay, and Dan.
Andrew. I'm glad you brought that up, Josh, because I wasn't going to talk about that, but that's a really important issue. You know, I get asked about vote splitting when I'm out on the campaign trail talking to people, and you know that's one of their biggest concerns. And my response is, let's not split the vote. Let's vote all PPC, because they're the only one. They're the only one that's going to defend your rights and freedoms. They're the only ones. Everybody else is going to take them away, and they're going to do it as they've been doing it for the last 18 months. This is the prime issue of our day. What sort of relationship do we want to have with our government? Do we want them more involved or less?
All right, I think that covers everybody on that question. I think it covers all the questions, at least the time that we have for them. So next piece of this, the last final piece, is just a closing remark from everybody. We've assigned 90 seconds to everybody. We'll go in the reverse order that we went in at the beginning. So we're going to go Josh first, if you'd like to go ahead and make your closing remarks.
Right, so, you know, guys, I'm asking all of you to vote for me on September 20th. I'm asking you to vote for something different. And I think you should think back to 2019. Think back to that feeling that you had the night of the election, when it was decided before our votes were even counted here. We need something different. We need somebody that can stand up in Parliament and defend Western Canadians. We need somebody that is only unconflicted. I won't be interested in Ontario and Quebec. They have their own parties. And frankly, the Conservative Party can have Ontario. We need somebody on this side of the country that's defending us. And I'd ask you to please vote for me on September 20th. Thank you very much.
We'll go to John next.
Thank you, everybody, for participating in this tonight. And I think what you've heard is a lot of different approaches on a lot of the same issues. But I think what Foothills needs right now is experience, someone who's accountable, someone who knows the system and has shown you that you have someone you can trust and count on in Ottawa. But I think what's most important is you have an opportunity. Take a look at what's going on across Canada. You have an opportunity to elect strong, united, majority Conservative government. We built 14 pipelines when we were a government. We got us through the worst depression in Canadian history. We balanced the budget in 2015. We can do those things again as a Conservative government representing Foothills. I will be that person. I hope to have your support on September 20th. Thank you. You can vote. Advanced polls start September 14th. There you go.
Michelle.
So first of all, thank you for giving us this opportunity to come forward as candidates and show the diverse representation of the Foothills. I think for myself, I really want to leave you with this. This is an important job, and we've sat in this church for the last 2 hours, and we've listened to 3 candidates be unbelievably divided and blaming each other with no real plan for tomorrow. We haven't taken accountability for what this Foothills riding actually needs, and we've heard the same speech over and over again, or more rhetoric that doesn't actually address the issue. I want to see more jobs. I want to see prosperity. I want to see farmers not dependent on big agriculture. I want accountability from the government at all levels. I want connection between different levels of government, both federally, provincially, and municipalities, working together to better the situation. This is a job interview. There's 5 candidates who are applying for this job, and you as a voter get to decide who is the best person for that job. So when it comes to the election on September 20th and you go into that election booth, I want you to remember that you have the power to decide who represents your riding. Do you want people who sit and get lost in the rhetoric, or do you want people who learn and grow and do what's best for you in this moment in time? Thank you.
And Dan.
Okay, so I truly believe the NDP wants you to have more money. And that leads me into how I want to sum up this whole night. And that is that I learned a new term this last 18 months. It's called gaslighting. Gaslighting means that you intentionally confuse someone with the intent of making them feel weak and helpless. And that's what we've been experiencing for 18 months. Here's the things they've been telling us that are just not true. That novel coronavirus will destroy the world. That we only need 2 weeks to flatten the curve. That the only way to save the world is for everyone to be vaccinated. And then they're trying to tell us that Erin O'Toole is a conservative. This is gaslighting. We've got to stop listening to the lies. Now, the only person that I know that has been speaking the truth consistently and that will and has taken the darts from the media for years is Maxime Bernier. I believe in him as a leader, and I can tell you that you can trust him too.
Okay, well, guys, that brings us to the end of the evening. Thank you to the candidates again. Just to review who we have a choice between. It's Daniel Hunter with the People's Party, John Barlow with the Conservative Party, Josh Wiley with the Maverick Party, Paula Schimpf with the Liberal Party. And we're really sorry that technology didn't work out for you tonight, Paula, but we'll definitely look forward to seeing your answers to these questions in the days to come. Michelle Traxel with the NDP Party, and Brett Rogers, who obviously isn't here, name tag's there, but he is on the ballot as well, so there's 6 choices. Thank you guys for coming, and thank you for educating us on your answers to these questions. Thanks to Don and Sarah for the work that they've done, but most importantly, Tim and Terry in the back who have provided the space for us and done the technical stuff for us tonight. Really appreciate your work, and thank you for that. I didn't ask any of them this, but I assume that they'll stick around for a couple minutes afterwards if you have more questions or if you want to just shake hands and meet. Otherwise, thank you for being here. Drive safe. Is that Dawn? Okay. Thanks for saving her on that front.